Hello there, so you clicked the video and want to know how I painted this, right? That's fair, so let's get started. The first thing that I've done, as you have seen the intro, is to put a thin layer of nature color on the canvas, mixed with a lot of medium, making it half transparent. And in this case I used burnt umber. As you're asking, this is oil painting, by the way. Burnt umber for me is the perfect pigment for underpainting, and because it's fast drying, it has a really balanced hue and helps a lot with skin tones in these cases. After that, I painted the subject directly and trying to get the shapes and the values done quickly. Painting without an on the drawing may appear tricky at first glance, but we're here to master the use of brushes and not other things, right? I know it's going to be difficult for the first times, but I find it as a good way to understand things not as lines, but as shapes, something which I'm going to talk about later. And that what are you going to do is really simple. If you want to have some highlights, you can just get rid of that thin layer with some paper. And if you want to have some shadows instead, you just put some paint on it. At the end of this, you're going to have only 3 values and no more. Remember, only 3 values to have everything really simplified and set the structure of the painting early, thus making your life as someone who paints definitely easier. After this rough and fast underpaint, I usually start with mid values because there's just a lack of them, and then I fill everything just real quick. Now here you need to be extra careful because in theory, here you choose the hue and the values of the paint. But I've done it too quickly and I figured it out only later when I've already done the mistakes. Yeah, that's not optimal, but most of the time I can fix that, so is it still good, I guess? So I usually paint wet on wet, so you guys know that is a fast-paced method with speed-running tendencies. And unfortunately, by getting things done fast, it's natural to make plenty of mistakes that need to be fixed later on in the painting process. And some of them are not a big deal, but others certainly are, especially during the blocking stage where the mistakes make your work kind of bad, honestly.
And this may cause you symptoms such as rage, anxiety, and low self-esteem.
It's one of the worst things to realize that something is not well proportionated or not in the right inclination when the work is finished and you just want to quit and, I don't know, go outside maybe and watch the sunset. Since this was a relatively small canvas, every stroke is a shape. That's actually good, because it forces you to think differently and make different decisions. Now, it's crucial to be able to observe things without thinking about the lines, especially when we're talking about figurative painting. Understanding things as shapes and values is a way to simplify the complexity and break the subject one by one down. For example, this part of the leg in the shadow can be interpreted as a big trapezius shape with the darkest value. A great way to see values is to squeeze your eyes, and your blurred vision will eliminate the details that take attention, making sure that you can focus solely on values. Take these pictures for instance. It's much easier to see the picture in the picture with lower quality because richer the details, more attention they will drain, and eventually the integrity of the whole is overshadowed by the specific. Once you have set enough space, you can define the shape of that specific geometric form, furthermore adjusting the wrong edges. Here, as you can see, I'm trying to make the edges more correct. I don't recommend starting blending right now because it's really easy to get lost. Oil is a slow drying medium, therefore you can blend at the end when the hue is great, the values are correct, and then you can just sit there refining your work, chilling, because you're sure that all the major flaws are corrected, something that you can certainly not be in this stage of the painting. Alright, this is going to be a good advice. Like I genuinely think it's a good one. Maybe I was copying before, but now I'm not. If you feel lost when we're talking about backgrounds, I have a solution for you. So as every painting, you want to make sure that the viewer looks at your work and pays attention to something. And generally, you want the viewer to look at the subject, and how you design the background actually helps in this task. One of the easiest way to do it, yeah, that's such a no-brainer concept, is to create a contrast, which in this case is expressed with values between the subject and background. Since this was a study and no background was present in the reference picture, I just paint around this guy. Here for example, I put a lot of dark beside the left side because the left side has a brighter value. And there, the right side, where the shadow take place, I previously wiped out the paint, letting the white of the canvas to its jar. It won't be coherent for most of the time, but for these exercises where you focus on painting one subject, that's great. And if you manage to bring up a coherent background while popping out and really highlight the subject, then it's perfect. Sometimes we encounter little errors and details where to change a value in such a small space would eventually result almost brutal. In these cases, you can try to shift the hue a little bit so that two colors with the same value will appear distinct anyway. This concept applies the same way but backwards. If you don't want the eye to pay too much attention to something not important, maybe a peripheral part, you can just make a lost edge and blend that with the background. As the painting progresses, we enter in one of the longest phases. Some call it the middle stage, some others refer it to as the refining stage, but I personally call it the undo stage. Your soul thinks that it's safe to move forward, and you start putting details and midtones in pursuit of realism. It feels like that everything's going to turn out great, and your ego flies sky high. But then you make those minor errors, not a great deal you may think, and when you go to fix them, you find out that you did in fact fix nothing, because the new brushstrokes that you have just put on the canvas result wrong anyways, and you end up in an infinite loop of Ctrl Z. If this happens to you, just stop. Trust me. If you painted till this phase, I think you probably need to take a break. You'll be refreshed. Meanwhile, I added some highlights and put more details, refined the shapes more, and eventually darkened his hairs too. For the legs, I didn't change much. I liked the warmer hue, and I didn't put too many details, because they're not meant to capture all the attention, and generally I like the effect of few but good brushstrokes. They're so poetic and communicate a lot with so little. Coming back up, when I stayed once more at the back by adding those highlights previously with only white, I realized that the skin tone should have been more saturated, and the guy appeared a little bit sick. Choosing the right hue, I would say it's not the most important thing in a figurative drawing or a portrait, let's say, because good values are much more valuable. For example, you can recognize someone in a black and white pencil drawing, but imagine getting the values wrong. Or even worse, imagine getting the proportions wrong. As you continue to paint, like revelations forbidden to be discovered till then, some structural mistakes will eventually come to the surface. Here for example, I fixed the shoulder a little bit more, because it wasn't flexed like that, and actually protruded ahead a little bit more. This happens, at least as I understand, because the eyes are so used to the error and they do not care that they do not even signal it through the brain cells. You had literally one work and you failed it. Oh my god. No, I'm just kidding. I love my eyes. And yours too. what usually happens is that you will feel like there's something going wrong and you just can't figure it out. What I do in these cases is to change the area of the painting that needs to be completed. Sometimes, for example, I'll add some paint in the background so that my eyes kind of reset the whole thing. And then I return after a while to the area that I previously had some trouble with it. Otherwise, yeah, you just leave, take a break, and then return after your eyes are refreshed. For instance, a lot of time I notice how horrible the work of mine is just by looking at it the next day. So going toward the end, I defined the arm better. One thing that I noticed is how some painters like to make the arms, especially the hands, more saturated with this reddish warmer hue. Regarding this, I have some theories. So firstly, having the hands with different hues compared with the rest of the body, it's a great way to enhance them. It's a great way actually to highlight one of the most expressive parts of the body after all. And the second theory is perhaps this is just how the model's hands are. There's a lot of blood circulation near the hands and the face, which can make them appear redder than the torso. And yeah, generally the hands and the forearms are darker than the rest of the body, since they're usually uncovered and exposed to sunlight. Since the canvas is really small and the hand is composed of complex shapes, I needed time to paint in detail. And because I'm not Sargent who's able to paint hands with 3 brush strokes like Waterfolk, I'm not just that great. And as you can see in the video, I've changed the hand quite a few times until I gambled away to achieve a good attempt. And yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed and peace.